George Wilson Coulter was born to Joseph Coulter and Mary Wilson in Westmoreland County on July 12, 1818. George was the eldest of 6 children and was educated in general school before taking arms in the war with Mexico. He was stationed in Santa Fe until an honorable discharge brought him back home and into married life with Miss Margaret Backhouse. In 1843, they lived a few years in St. Louis, Missouri, when George was sent again to military service. By the late 1840s, George and Margaret left Pennsylvania in a covered wagon with 2 sons and a baby in tow. They traveled the Overland Trail and stopped in Santa Fe, where Margaret gave birth to George Jr. Meanwhile, George Sr. worked briefly at a hotel until hearing about the California gold rush and crossed the plains with his family from Santa Fe to Mariposa. He mined the area until November 5, 1849, and crossed to San Jose for the winter before returning in the spring. In December, George arrived in Stockton and was a guest of Charles M. Weber, the town's founder. With the help of a new partner, he had enough collateral to open a store on Merced River at the mouth of Solomon's Gulch. In 1850, seeing an opportunity to supply the miners, they raised a tent, but found with the competition very little profit. The distant family also wanted to settle down, so when a friend named Martin Evans wrote George of a new prospect, he listened with optimism. We camped 2 days under the oaks near the busy Maxwell Creek. After speaking of the mining, he pointed out 2 key features. The surroundings are beautiful and I think healthy, being a little under 2,000 feet. And he continued, there is no store. George quickly packed up and headed 13 miles north to Maxwell Creek. Feeling patriotic, he set up a blue tent and flew a small American flag at the camp of Mexican miners called banderita, meaning little flag or bandana, either in relation to the flag or the many Mexican workers already there who wore bandanas. In 1851, George was joined by his anxious wife and 3 children, Joseph, Agnes, and George, Jr., with another child on the way named Alexander Stair. Aside from the threat of flooding that could decimate the adobe structures, the store was doing quite well, so he moved his business a mile east to higher ground where a business partner, George Maxwell, for whom the creek is named, challenged him to a game of drawing sticks. You see, they were both eager to name the settlement after one another, thinking each had a right to the work involved in the camp. But thankfully, they were friendly enough to keep their promise and let the winner get the naming rights. By 1853, a year after opening, the post office called itself Coulterville, but it was not officially recognized as a town until 1872. Speaking of mail, Buffalo Bill Cody's cousin, Nelson, once served as their postmaster. The placer mines produced $15 to $20 a day. Coulterville was fast becoming an important supply center, with merchants delivering their goods by pack mule to the richest placers of Maxwell, Boneyard, and Black Creeks. Soon, quartz mining was also being tapped into, with the richest being the Mary Harrison, and the camp became equally crucial for hard rock mining. The mine was discovered around 1867 and operated for another 40 years, descending 1,200 feet by shaft and winch. Andrew Goss led the efforts with the first stamp mill to crush ore to find quartz. The 8-ton Porter locomotive, Whistling Billy, was used to haul ore from the Mary Harrison mine. Its stretch of track was 4 miles long and considered the world's crookedest railroad for its bumpy zigzag path. In the spring of 1853, Margaret had a second child, Anna Mary, the first settler that was born there in the camp. The diverse population increased upwards of 5,000 with 9 nationalities and 1,000 that were Chinese. Notably, there were 10 hotels, one being the Johnny Hay Hotel, and 25 saloons, such as the Magnolia Saloon, among other businesses, including a stamp mill and blacksmith shop. The Chinese were involved with many projects to advance the camp, from the roads to the permanent structures. The foreign miners' tax of 1850 and several actions by the government limited their work. A short distance north of the plaza was a temple, public bake ovens where people would go to gossip, and the well-loved Sun Sun Wu Company store for supplies, with a bordello beside it named Candy's Place. Initially built in 1851 by Mao de Sun and his son, Sun Cao, its walls were made from the uprooted basement soil, with several inches of dirt layered over the beam's ceiling to help insulate in cold and summer. This trick made it fire-resistant and helped it survive the calamities in camp. The store supplied the whole community, from miners, ranchers, and served many purposes, from general supplies to a blacksmith shop, storeroom, and even a small opium den in the back. The Qing Cemetery behind the store had elaborate burials for the little camp. Even the school teacher occasionally brought her students to watch. According to sources, there is a belief that the soul cannot rest on a foreign soil, so many were reinterned back to China. The property owner mentioned that the cemetery behind it was for women only, and that the belief only referred to the men. Whatever the case, there are little gravestones left, and it is now on private land. With the population increasing, so too did the crime. In 1854, a man named Watkins was caught stealing and lashed 25 times before being expelled from the camp. On March 16, 1856, Leon Ruiz was captured after killing 2 Chinese miners at Bear Valley and robbing their sluice of dust and nuggets worth $600. Justice was swift, and Leon was dragged and strung up to the hanging tree across the plaza from the Mexican Hotel, what would become later called Hotel Jeffrey. At the time, the Mexican Hotel was a 2-story saloon in Fandango Hall. In 1870, George Jeffrey converted the 30-inch thick walls and added another floor, turning it into the iconic hotel that once had the likes of Teddy Roosevelt dropping by. George Coulter had become the cherished founder of the town. After managing a hotel in Yosemite and hearing about the completion of the Sierra Railroad to Jamestown, 20 miles north, he decided to open a hotel in 1897 at Chinese Station. It was called the Coulter Hotel and was not only famous but also noted to be finely furnished. Water for the hotel was pumped from a well by circling Newfoundland dogs. Unfortunately, July was always a dangerously hot month, and the camp burned 3 times 20 years apart, starting in 1859, 79, and 99. In 1862, a flood also ravaged the town, and what the locals called the Gold Rush of 1899 happened when an old adobe building caught fire. The town used the building remains to fill potholes, and unknowingly, when it rained, the building's contents revealed to include countless gold coins. Every man and woman and child raced to the streets to uncover more gold coins, digging and leaving a terrible mess that prevented passage through the town. Before this, in 1889, the Yosemite National Park opened, and the road through town became the most accessible, making Coulterville a tourist destination. They came by stage or horse, and eventually the so-called horseless carriage, what we know now as a car. The following years also brought a renewed interest in amateur mining, and new buildings sprouted up like the General Store in 1896. In the later years, George remained very involved with his family and provided them with every business opportunity he could. On January 11th, 1902, he traveled home after staying with them in Madeira for the holidays, but came down with an illness he couldn't shake. He died at his home at the age of 84 and was buried beside his wife, who died in 1891. This has been Biographies of the West. My name is Lorin Morgan-Richards. Thanks for watching.